got married in 2014, and my husband and I had our first child pretty quickly. So we felt very lucky and blessed because it didn't take us very long to have our first child. But after that, I learned what is secondary infertility because it took us a long time before we had number 2. I wanted to space the pregnancies out about 3 years or 4 years. So when we started trying, we didn't think much. We thought because the first pregnancy came easy, so maybe the second one wouldn't be too much of a problem, but we were wrong. So we tried for a year and nothing happened. And so my husband and I went to see a gynae who's also a fertility doctor. And from the checks, I found out that one of my fallopian tubes was blocked. So I think that was one of the main reasons why we couldn't get pregnant. And when I found that out, of course, I felt inadequate. I felt like it's my fault, because it's me, right? So for a while, I felt a little bit dejected. There was a little bit of a psychological battle there. But of course, I told myself, okay, it's all right. And under advice from the doctor, we decided not to do any surgery yet, but we started taking pills, making changes to our lifestyles. We also started to see a TCM physician to get some traditional Chinese medicine help. So she administered some herbs and also suggested that I take my basal body temperature, do some charts. And we made changes to our lifestyle, like I said. For example, we ate healthier, we exercised more, which is, all the good things that we should be doing. We cut down on social drinking. In terms of work as well, because I hosted the morning show, which is very taxing for me. The morning radio show is every weekday from 6 to 10 a.m. So it was really, really tiring. So I requested to be taken off that show so that I could get more sleep, more time to rest. And after about 1.5 years of trying, still nothing happened. And so we decided to get a second opinion. We went to see another fertility doctor. And that's when things started to change. He suggested that I go for a surgery to unblock the fallopian tube. And we were about to proceed with the surgery when I found out that I was pregnant. You can imagine how happy I was, right? How happy we were. But sadly, that pregnancy didn't last. Just shy of 3 months, I lost the baby. Now in retrospect, I feel that it gave me even more determination to try because I knew that my body could do it. I can do it, we can do it. So even though we were very sad, it gave me courage to go through with the surgery to unblock the fallopian tube. And shortly after that, I got pregnant again. And now I'm happy to say that I'm mother to 2 crazy, active boys who drive me crazy, but I love them so much. But tonight, I decided that I think I should share this with all of you, especially with you who may be experiencing challenges trying to conceive. Because I feel that, I hope that with my sharing, it will give you some courage and also it will encourage you to keep on trying.
One of the messages that you mentioned, which I think is very important, which I would like to emphasize to all the couples out there, is really not to give up and to keep trying. The main treatment options for these problems that I've highlighted after a fertility health check can be discussed with you by your doctor. So these are the main modes of treatment. There can be surgery done to enhance your natural fertility. So for instance, in Pei Fen's case, to unblock the tubes, as well as treatment of ovarian cysts or removing polyps from the cavity. Subsequently, there is other methods such as ovulation induction for those ladies who are not ovulating regularly. They may be amenable to ovulation medications, either in the form of oral tablets or even injections. And the other fertility treatments include IUI or intrauterine insemination or artificial insemination, where the sperm is concentrated and injected into the womb so that it's much closer to the egg and we can increase the concentration of the sperm around the egg at the time of ovulation. And lastly, there's IVF or intracytoplasmic sperm injection, which is also otherwise known as ICSI, which Dr. Balaji is going to share more on. Okay, so for the basic fertility health check, some of the components can actually, the results are relevant for quite some time. So certain things like the egg count would be relevant for a shorter period, so within months or up to a year at most. For the older ladies, it can be as short as 3 months. And other tests such as the thyroid screen, for instance, or the scan of the womb and ovaries, as well as the tuber check, will be able to last longer for about 1 to 2 years even. And the semen analysis, provided that it was satisfactory to begin with, can also last for quite some time, at least 2 to 3 years. If, however, the semen analysis was not good, then in that case, as the condition can continue to deteriorate, then men should generally repeat the semen analysis in the future, so that in the near future, so that to compare the results. So it's not exactly annual, but certainly it depends on the components of the fertility health check, and that will be assessed by your gynecologist. Essentially, a fertility diet is a health diet. Everything in moderation, as Iwei said. There is no particular foods to eat during IVF, but there are certain supplements that we do recommend to couples in order to optimize before their IVF cycles. So for about a couple of months, they may be on certain vitamins, folic acid, vitamin D, as well as CoQ10 enzyme, which is an antioxidant to try and help improve egg quality. So these are some of the things that couples can take to help optimize their body constitution before the IVF. So on that note as well, regarding the TCM suggestions, everybody's body constitution is different, so you should seek professional help, whether it's a gynecologist or a TCM physician, to understand more about your own body's constitution first before you go ahead with supplements or treatments or changes in your diet, because I think that is the most important thing to take note of, that your plan should be individualized to your body's constitution. Everything is not applicable to everybody. So obviously, any instrumentation into the womb can injure the womb. But if you think about it, if you already have a polyp, then that polyp is already causing a problem. And so treatment or surgery to remove it is to try and help resolve this problem. Yes, it may create another problem, which is scarring, but that is very rare. And in the obviously, if you go to a fertility specialist to get this surgery done, then special precautions will be taken to ensure to minimize this scarring risk. And scar tissue can be treated further with surgery to try and remove the scarring. If healthy meant that there were no problems detected during the fertility health check, that the womb condition is healthy and the sperm check is fine, then during the IUI process, certain parameters can also be observed by your gynecologist to tell you whether the cycle was optimal. And if your cycle is optimal, then the chances of pregnancy is about 15 to 20%. And of course, this declines if you're 40 years old, you're not going to be facing this 15 to 20% chance. It will obviously be less than 10% inherently.
I'm going to talk about what happens in the IVF lab. So what do we do with the eggs and sperm? So once a patient is actually ready for egg collection, the patient comes to the IVF center, then the lab gets ready for the egg collection. So we have to welcome the eggs. So we prepare some plastic dishes and some nutritive solutions, what we call as media. All these are prepared the day before egg collection. And the next day is the egg collection, and we call it day 0. The eggs are collected. And you can see the picture labeled as egg, which has a central dark spot. That's the actual egg, surrounded by nutritive cells, which are supplying energy to this egg. And later, this egg may be processed or not processed, depending on what kind of insemination will be done. And in conventional IVF, there will be a lot of sperm, like hundreds and thousands of moving sperm, will be inseminated with this egg. And when it comes to the conventional insemination, only motile sperm can be effective. There is another way where there is not many number of moving sperm available from the husband's sperm sample, we can go for a method called ICSI, or intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where the nutritive cells of the egg should be removed, and we have to ask the husband to submit the sperm sample. We process this sperm sample. The first window shows the sperm sample under the microscope, where you can see some of them are moving and some of the sperm are not moving and some of them are abnormal. And we have to isolate all the good swimmers. And in the second window, you can see that almost 100% of them are moving very well. So we have to pick up this sperm and do ICSI. So when it comes to ICSI, we have to pick up a motile sperm, and then we have to slash the tail so that it doesn't move anymore. Pick up this with a small, fine glass needle and bring it to the egg and inject it into the egg. So you can see the needle carrying the sperm going through the egg and aspirating some of the part of the egg, what we call as cytoplasm, to make sure that the process is going on well. And the sperm is released into the egg. So this is intracytoplasmic sperm injection, or ICSI in short. So then the inseminated eggs are left in the incubator for next 18 to 20 hours. Or sometimes we do it even 16 to 18 hours. And we look at these inseminated eggs to see whether they are fertilized. In the second window, you can see the top egg having 2 circles at the center. That's considered normal fertilization. The one below showing more than 2 circles, so that's considered abnormal. So anything other than 2 circles, which are actually the nucleus, one comes from the sperm, one comes from the egg. So after this, again, we put them back into the incubator and leave them undisturbed for another 24 hours. The next day morning, which is day 2, the embryo is supposed to be at 4-cell stage. Then another 24 hours, it is supposed to be at the 8-cell stage. On day 4, it has to be at a stage called morula, where all the cells fuse together. Then on day 5, it becomes a blastocyst. Blastocyst is a ball of cells. It has, you can see the rim of cells in the periphery, which becomes the placenta, and the conical cell mass that is present inside the embryo, that becomes the baby upon transferring this embryo to the uterus. So at this stage, we decide whether we can go ahead with transfer or cryopreservation. So depending on the cell stage and when we are going to do the transfer would be done. The embryologist will load the embryo into the catheter, a plastic tubing, and it is passed over to the gynecologist like Dr. Janice, and they put it into the uterus. So remaining embryos, the supernumerary embryos, can be frozen and kept in the liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius. So that's what we call as cryopreservation, and we store them until they are required again. In some cases, the embryo transfer may not be done, so all the usable embryos will be frozen and they will be kept inside these storage tanks. And after embryo transfer, about 2 weeks later, the patient has to go for a blood test to check whether she's pregnant or not. If she tested positive with the blood test, then she will come back for a scan in another 2 weeks' time, where the pregnancy is confirmed. So that's the total IVF journey. That's a good question. Initially, we thought that fresh cycles, that is transferring fresh embryos into the womb, gives a better success rate. But of late, globally, there is a changing trend. We see that the frozen embryos are actually giving a better pregnancy rate than the fresh embryos. So it has been shown by many literature. But the thing here is that still we can't do frozen embryo transfer for everybody. Right? So those who ever had so many embryos frozen may try this, but those who are with only very few embryos available in the fresh cycle, generally we tend to transfer in the fresh cycle itself. But there is a global trend, yes, frozen embryos showing a better success rate than the fresh embryos. With the age in IVF, we see that the chances are getting lesser and lesser. Right? So it depends on her previous failures or what condition she was in, whether this was her first attempt. So there are many conditions that we need to look at before telling them whether to take 1 or 2 embryos. But with that age, generally we recommend that taking 2 embryos may have a higher chance.
My segment tonight will be sharing with all of you on how TCM can boost your fertility health. And not many people know that actually TCM can help you in this trying to conceive journey. Most people are aware that Chinese medicine consists of long hours of brewing medicine for cough, cold, for chronic conditions. But when it comes to fertility, not many are sure how it can work. So for fertility, usually it starts with a couple consultation together with the physician. And it would be good if you have a fertility assessment report. And I just want to reinforce what Dr. Tong said earlier, to go for an assessment early. I think that when we go for an assessment, it's not to say that we have a problem, but I would say that it is more like collecting data points about yourself and your spouse. And we are all into data nowadays, isn't it? I know many of us use those fertility apps, and it's always interesting to look back on the past history to see trends, to see what are the changes, whether we have been ovulating, etc. So fertility assessment is definitely something that is useful even at the start of your fertility journey. And if you do have one of these reports, you can bring them on your first visit to see the physician. And it definitely is provides important information. But other than that, the physician will also look out for other wellness issues that is inherent in both you and your spouse. Because unlike mainstream medicine, which is very specific and focused on reproductive organs like your hormones, whether there are cysts growing, fibroids, etc., TCM adopts a more holistic approach and trying to identify, could there be any issues in your lifestyle? Could there be any issues with your diet? What are some of the wellness things that you can do to achieve a balanced constitution that provides that conducive environment for natural conception to take place? And when it comes to treatment modalities, there are two primary modalities. One is acupuncture and one is Chinese medicine. Acupuncture is the one that most people have difficulty understanding because it involves the concept of energy that is not seen, that is not tangible. So a lot of times when patients ask about acupuncture, number one is, how does it work? Okay, so I will explain to them, in our bodies are many channelways, pathways, or if you like, you can call it the expressways in your body that carries energy and blood to the different parts of your body, to the different organs. And with acupuncture, that involves using very thin needles, stimulating at different points that is pertinent to your constitution, we can unblock some of this energy flow and thereby improving circulation. So a better blood flow to your ovaries will help, and the egg quality and better blood flow to your womb can help with the lining that is important during the implantation period. So, and for Chinese medicine, most of you are familiar, but something that is very new is that most TCM clinics now have moved on from raw herbs, using raw herbs that you have to brew. Now we are using mostly powder, which is equally efficient, equally effective as the raw herbs, because some people identify like, raw herbs are more effective, but that's not true. This powder or microcapsules forms are very convenient and are equally effective as well. So this powder is easily, you can easily prepare, just dissolve in warm water and to take it 2 times a day. So this is what's usually required. And usually when we prepare a concoction for patients, we not only look at the medical condition, for example, a lady with PCOS or a lady with endometriosis, that's part 1 of the prescription, and part 2 will look at the body constitution, because 2 women having the same issue, for example, 2 women having PCOS will receive very different prescription depending on their physical constitution as well. In Singapore, in the last 15 years especially, when TCM becomes a credited practice, we see more and more TCM support for couples who are going through IUI or IVF. Yeah, so and how this works generally is we will get couples to come in at least 3 months before they decide to embark on their procedures to get them familiarized with the TCM treatment and also to prepare them. And how is this preparation done? Is generally through weekly acupuncture and if necessary to take some herbs as well because most patients nowadays, they come with different issues, other than fertility. They might have gut problems like bloating, indigestion, or stress issues that affect their sleep, their emotional wellness, that can create an imbalance in the constitution. So this is when the acupuncture and Chinese medicine can work concurrently in the shortest time possible to prepare the couple. And once the couple enters into the IUI or the IVF process where doctors start to give you drugs for stimulation purpose, we usually will withdraw the Chinese medicine and just depend on acupuncture itself to help to support the whole process. For example, during stimulation, we will work on stimulating the kidney energy to boost the ovarian function. And for implantation purpose, then we will focus more on the liver and the spleen energy, where it helps to create a more conducive environment for implantation to take place. Generally, tea, so not just tea, there are many food beverages that TCM classifies with different properties. So in general, it's either warm, neutral, or cooling. Yeah. So tea falls into the cooling category, especially your green teas. Yeah, so of course, different types of teas, depending on how they are fermented, the properties will also alter. Yeah, but green tea generally is more cooling, so we don't advise patients to overconsume. All right, so we're talking about overconsumption because there are many women who take tea as a form of hydration, means that they don't drink water, but they drink tea instead the whole day long. And that is excessive, yeah. So if we keep to 1 cup a day or at most 2 cups, I believe that's fine, unless patient herself already suffers from cold syndrome, meaning that when you take tea, it makes your gut feel very uncomfortable and you have certain tendency that shows that, you tend to have a cold syndrome. But I think the best would be to check with your TCM physician because some women are more heaty, so the tea actually works well for them. But in general, overconsumption of cooling beverages not recommended. My whole life, I've been practicing in a hospital-based setting. So, and we sort of have an unspoken agreement with doctors. Yeah, unless there are some doctors who say, yes, it is fine. Yeah, I've spoken to different doctors who have different opinions as well. But in general, we try not to mix the two. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, for IUI and IVF, during the preparation period, yes, we do give patients Chinese medicine, but once they embark on the treatment itself, then we will hold off the medicine and just treat with acupuncture. As a TCM physician, I would say take only what you need. Yeah, because I think now with affluence, most of us can afford, we can afford a lot of different supplements, treatments, etc. Yeah, so I mean, it's not surprising, when a patient first comes in to see me and then she will give me a detailed list. I do have patients who come in with very detailed lists of the different supplements that they are taking. Yeah, so much so that, they have to split it over, the different times of the day. And I think that is excessive, yeah. So yes, so if you find that, these food supplements, they do help you, in your energy, in your, your approach, being more positive, in control of your own health, by all means, go ahead. Yeah, but try to strike a balance, keep it in moderation, take only what your body needs. when it comes to sperm, generally, when it comes to volume, it's about a yin issue. So medicine that is nourishing for the kidney yin will help. And when it comes to the count, the motility that involves, anything that moves, it's more about the yang energy. And so this is where medicine that is more higher in the yang, kidney yang energy will be deployed. And as for morphology, which is a really, really tough issue, sometimes we can use some blood-moving herbs that might help, to improve the morphology.
I think when someone feels very strong anxiety, where there's a rumination, this sort of like an obsessiveness, almost an obsessiveness of like, over control, over, maybe what they have been doing. Guilt, I think when the women start to feel guilt, where it becomes what we describe it as an inappropriate guilt towards a stressful event, or avoidance behaviors, avoiding baby departments, children's departments, not being able to see babies, avoiding people with babies. Those are actually times where it tells us that this person probably needs a bit more help. Having kids is a take two hands to clap, and is a decision between two people. So husbands and wives need to have very good communication and support. I think men themselves, although they have to go through some tests, right? What I understand, they do go through some tests. But even those men who are not going through the tests, the frustrations that they describe, having to go through trying every month, and even having the negative test. I think some men tell me that when they see that the wife only have that one line, they get stressed, because it means, oh, I have to keep trying harder next time. Or sometimes they tell me when they go to see the doctor, some doctors say, oh, you didn't try hard enough, and then they get even more stressed. So it's a silent struggle. I think it is going to be very stressful, especially if you keep trying and nothing seems to work. And it's quite hard to deal with the stress where there's a lot of uncertainty. You have no control over. So very important for individuals to recognize what they can control, what they can't. So things like if you can identify your source of stress and be able to do things to manage that, those are things that you have control. Exercise, cutting out on your drinking, watching your diet, having good sleep. These are things that you can control. But like as Dr. Tung has mentioned, there's only so much science can do. There's also a part of life that we have no control over, and we need to take that perspective. We can't control everything.
Don't give up. Go for your fertility check, www.ilovechildren.sg. And also, you can try different methods, different ways to make changes to your lifestyle to make it more conducive for conceiving. And it's not just the women, the men have to do their job as well.